And we're back. And we're doing a little tutorial today because I'm on holidays, probably sitting on a beach in Lisbon somewhere, drinking some whiskey, or in a bar in Lisbon somewhere, drinking some whiskey. Somewhere in Lisbon, there's whiskey and there's me. But today we're going to cover one of those subjects that I find really, really useful, and that is practical automation. Just a little bit of practical automation. I've seen many bases with lots of excessive automation, as I'd call it, but just little bits of practical automation can make your life a lot simpler and goes a long way towards making your base sustainable. Now, I'm not going to be covering the ins and outs of how all the automation gates work. This is not that type of tutorial. I want to show you practical automation, stuff that you would actually put into effect and use, and about the stage of the game where you're going to first encounter that is when you set up your first self-powered electrolyzer. Self-powered electrolyzers are really handy. If you haven't actually built one before, you really need to do that. But the first thing you're going to encounter is they output this hydrogen. Now, if this hydrogen here backs up, it will actually cause complications with these designs. It's a known issue, so you don't let the hydrogen back up. The most common thing people do is they just dump the hydrogen straight into a couple of hydrogen generators, one or two, depending on what a SOPOM or self-powered electrolyzer setup you're using. And any power they generate is either feeds this machine or is dumped into the jumbo battery right here. You're just burning off all the hydrogen immediately and storing up enough power in this jumbo battery to make sure that this system will always keep running. This is a simple, safe way to make sure all the hydrogen is burnt off. However, you could be siphoning off that power. You could be actually using that power for something better. So for example, if we just say grab another battery in here, we'll grab a smart battery, stick that in there. Oh, actually, let's make sure we have enough hydrogen in the line. Yeah, we'll probably be fine. And then we'll hook up an automation wire. And we're going to put that at, say, 1960. Now let's just fast forward this a little bit, shall we? So, as you can see right here, the hydrogen is actually starting to back up all the way. And this is bad. This hydrogen is going to back up into the system. This is all excess hydrogen we're producing, now that we're regulating the control. So what we want to do is come up with a little automated system to siphon off enough hydrogen so that we don't have any problems. Simplest thing to do is you get one of these gas bridges here, which I've already placed here in advance, and we're just going to siphon off the gas. Any overflow hydrogen will flow out through there. Let's actually just stick on a quick bridge here. Yeah, that should be fine. And now you'll see that that hydrogen just flows straight down here. So this means you'll always have a bit of a buffer of hydrogen here waiting to get fed into the battery, and then all the excess hydrogen will get sent over here. And we're going to pretend that we're dumping this into our base where we're going to be hooking it up to our systems. And this is probably what you'll end up with first time you do it, which is a couple of gas tanks for storage and your hydrogen generator hooked into your main grid with a smart battery, of course, to help burn off that power at a reasonable rate. But of course, what you've done here is what's going to happen to you a lot throughout this game, is you've actually created a point of failure without even realizing it. Eventually, this hydrogen is going to back up. If you're not burning it fast enough, it will back up through this tank and back up all the way along again, and you won't even notice. It might take 100 cycles, it might take 300 cycles, but next thing you'll know, you'll be seeing a bunch of hydrogen inside your base, and you have no idea how it got there until you trace it back to this. Yeah, this happens to everyone. So, simplest thing to do is we want to create a little automated system here to burn off the hydrogen when the tanks fill up. If both of these tanks are full, then we want to start just burning stuff. We don't want to be waiting around anymore. So, how do we do that? Here we have some very simple automation. It's not too complicated. We're basically taking this down here and just automating it slightly. And the only automation sensor we've got is a gas element sensor, but we're using a little bit of pipe overflow. So let me cover this. Hopefully I can explain it in a way that's not too bad. But first, hydrogen generator hooked up to a battery, smart battery. Smart battery just keeps it between 60 to 90%. And this is currently powering a couple of fridges. So we actually get a bit of power drain. That way the hydrogen generator kicks in every so often, just to give us a sort of a realistic idea of what it would look like. Over here we've got our hydrogen income, and we're going to presume that's from the electrolyzer setup, so we'll set that to about 75 grams a second. It's not going to be that high, but that's what we're going to set it to. Now this goes across here, goes across the bridge, and goes straight into these buffer tanks. But what will happen is eventually you're going to end up with too much hydrogen in these tanks, and it's going to back up all the way up the pipe. So we'll just skip forward a bit as this sort of builds up. I want to kind of do this realistically. I prefer practical examples as opposed to theoretical ones. So as you can see, it just starts backing up, and once it backs up to here, it's going to overflow down this pipe. And when it does, something special is going to happen. You see this hydrogen generator down here? It's pumping on and off occasionally, but it's not actually pumping that much. And here we go. That hydrogen is now passed and hit this sensor. This sensor is set to detect hydrogen, and now we've got an automation signal going over here telling the hydrogen generator to turn on. And now it stays on. The hydrogen generator has kicked in and it won't shut off until that has escaped, which, okay, it just did. But this hydrogen can't escape from here until this hydrogen here is cleared. Because of the way pipe mechanics work, this gas bridge is trying to dump the hydrogen over here, but it can't cross over here while this pipe is still full of hydrogen. So until this pipe is empty, this will just sit there. So as you can see, that hydrogen generator is just going crazy, burning off hydrogen, and it will keep doing that until this pipe is cleared. Once that's cleared, this hydrogen can escape, and now it shuts off. This way, so long as the amount of hydrogen you're putting in is less than the amount of hydrogen the hydrogen generator can burn per second, this will never overflow. It will always burn off the excess. And this is the one thing that will kill you in the game, late game or mid and late game, more than being short of something. Normally you get around to fixing all your shortages. What will then surprise you is when something overflows or backs up that you didn't expect to have too much of. Polluted water, clean water, petroleum, crude oil, hydrogen, all those elements you're moving around the place, when they start, you've got to bear in mind that at some point they're going to back up. Now I made this nice and big so that you could see it in action, but you can make them much smaller and more compact. It's not that difficult. So we'll just have a quick run through here of modifying this design to actually serve that function. Now we'll just destroy that. Let's just do this the a simple way. So that goes in there. Well, I didn't leave myself much room, did I? Because I was a bit silly. We'll make it messy, so it goes about there. Now, of course, I have to put in a sensor. Where exactly the sensor goes doesn't matter too much, just so long as it's on the overflow pipe itself. Gas pipe element sensor. Let's put it there. Great, now I have to put it there. Not my smoothest job. And then that will go over here. Plug it to the generator. And we'll just set that to hydrogen. Boom. And there we go. Once this tank backs up, it'll back up to here, and then this overflow will happen. It'd probably be a better idea. You can make these much more smaller and compact with a little bit of planning ahead. For example, how about we just do it a slightly different way so that it doesn't look so god-awful ugly. Ventilation. Now this overflow can go left, right, but it can also go through the middle here. This acts as an overflow even this way, so you can do that. Bring it across to the side. Actually, I better pull it just a little bit more, and then we'll put in a bridge right there. Same effect. And then we'll just stick an automation sensor on, gas pipe element sensor, and we'll put it as close as we can to this point. We want to get it as close as we can to here. It just cuts down on the amount of hydrogen you're going to have backed up. There, copy settings, dump them over into that. Oop. Damn you, delete that. And then replace the wall. Oh, yeah. Close enough. Okay, and that's the same overflow system implemented right here. This hydrogen can never back up anymore. The moment too much hydrogen is in these tanks, that system will automatically switch the hydrogen generator on and burn them off. Now, I'm on this map here. It's an old save from an old game I was playing. And if you'll notice, I actually have the exact same system set up over here. This is a useful thing to have in place, and you will end up accumulating more hydrogen than you need. Now, a good thing to note about automation, it's just one of those things that's insanely intuitive. When you have, say, a smart battery hooked up, actually I have to go back up to here. When you have a smart battery hooked up, the green overwrites the red. A green signal overwrites a red signal. This took me a while to realize as well. So when this smart battery here goes below the required amount, say this one here, if it goes below 60%, it sends on an on signal. That on signal will override any red signals that are on the wire. So that's why when this detects that there's hydrogen, it sends a green signal to turn on the hydrogen generator. And no matter what the battery thinks, the hydrogen generator turns on, and vice versa. The battery doesn't care about what the sensor thinks. It's just good to know that. And that's probably the first piece of practical automation you're going to use. And honestly, most of the practical automation you use is going to be some variant on this. It's either going to be a liquid overflow or a gas overflow. They're the most common, they're the most practical, and they're the most helpful. Even the biggest bases you imagine will more than likely have some overflow automation built in. Now, the next step, what I want to cover is oil. Oil processing is one of those things that, actually, let's see, does this map have one done up? Oh, no, it's been removed already. So let's pop over to another map. Right here, what I'm trying to demonstrate is a system that uses pretty much the exact same mechanics, just to do something slightly different. And it's to do with the oil refineries. Oil refineries are one of those things that a lot of people waste a lot of duplicant time on. The duplicant will come along, start operating the oil refinery, and once the pipe backs up all the way to the machine, well, then they can't output any more oil. But then the moment a little bit of oil is burned off, then the duplicate comes back to operate it again. So I just want to demonstrate a little bit of automation you can do to get around it. Now, the automation is set up here in the middle one, and then I've got these other two which we're using as a control. This will become clearer as we go along. So all we have here is a very similar system. The petroleum is going to come out of here. It's going to try and go across and into these two tanks. Once these two tanks back up all the way, then it's going to overflow over this pipe, go over here, trip a sensor, and then try and enter on this line. That sensor it's tripping, we're just throwing it through a NOT gate. NOT gates reverse signals, so in this instance, we're not trying to turn something on, we're trying to turn something off. So what will happen is, once both of these tanks are full, and all the petroleum is backed up to here, it will turn off the oil refinery. This stops the duplicate running over to keep topping up every time it's 10 kilos short of a full pipe. At that point, it won't turn back on again until the pipe here is cleared, and that pipe is positioned between these two oil reservoirs. The reason for that, we want to actually burn through the first tank of petroleum. Once this first tank of petroleum is burned through, that will clear this pipe segment, and this petroleum here can escape, telling the sensor, turn the oil refinery back on. At which point, this tank will be empty, this tank will still be full, and then the oil refinery will start working again. This means our duplicant only comes along once, starts the process, and doesn't stop until the tank is full. In these instances, the duplicant is going to come along and keep having to run back and forth. And to demonstrate this, I've queued up a whole bunch of dig commands. But before we start, we have to hook up some sort of power drain here. In all fairness, I haven't actually tested this ahead of time, so let's just see how this experiment plays out, shall we? Okay, so all the petroleum generators kick in, the power settings, so all the power settings on all of these is set to the exact same, so it'll all burn the exact same amount of petroleum. So you can see the petroleum is moving off. Oh, one thing I also forgot to do is set priorities. I want to set everyone's priorities so that their tinkering or their operate is up by 1. So they're going to prioritize getting that oil refinery running. Wait, what the? Okay, so then they're going to run back every so often, and you'll see these two here keep running back to top up the oil refinery. Yep, go on, go back and top it up some more. Now, if we had a higher power drain, this would probably be more apparent, so let's show on a few more. And you notice this duplicant, all of these duplicants, I've picked them to make sure that they all have the exact same dig skill, the exact same everything skill. There's no differences between any of them. Well, some of them have a few skills here, like this duplicant has irritable, bowel, uncontrollable, and destructive. They've got tidy and supply, but none of them have bonuses to digging. None of them have bonuses to movement. None of them has bonuses to anything that would affect like a night owl bonus or a day whatever bonus. None of them have any of those bonuses. So they dig at the same speed, they move at the same speed, and they tinker at the same speed. And as you'll notice, these dupes keep running back and forth every so often to turn these on, and this is going to get worse and worse the further they get away from these. Oh, yes, also because I'm a horrible human being, I've gotten rid of all their downtime. So they'll keep working way, way, way too long. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. Just to show exactly how it is. And you'll notice this duplicant here is going along just fine because they have no need to go back and top this up. Until this first tank is empty, they're not going to go near it. Yet these duplicants just keep running back and forth pretty much every time. This one piece of automation will save you an enormous amount of time. You really only need one oil refinery to refine oil, and you're only going to do it for a while. Well, depending on your situation. Just install this little bit of basic automation, and you will save yourself a ton of wasted duplicant labor. Oh, see, now they're actually doing some real work because while they were sleeping, there was a decent draw on the line, or a decent amount of petroleum was burnt off. But now that that's stopped, they're back to going back and forth. Now, one relevant criticism you're going to have is, well, this duplicant is doing nothing because they're living off this entire reserve tank. Yes, that is very true. This duplicant is basically doing nothing to do with that because it's surviving on the reserve tank. That's fine. However, when it does come back, that duplicant will just work away at that system constantly. So they'll only have one trip back to the refinery and they'll stay there until it's done. These duplicants, how much time have they wasted running back and forth? How much? It's like over, mine one tile, run back. Over, mine one tile, run back. And that's it, again and again and again. And that's all it's going to be for eternity. So I'll just go over this automation one more time so you can get a look at it. And then I'll just sort of fast forward it and show you what happens when the system kind of resets. Petroleum comes along here, goes across, fills this tank. Once both of the tanks are full, it backs up and it will overflow this line and pop over here. Now, how you configure these pipes, you just have to make sure that the overflows are going to kick in at the right spots. You can configure this many different ways, or put the pipes slightly different locations, of course. But once the petroleum triggers this sensor, that sensor goes, well, there's petroleum there, so it sends it a green signal. The green signal goes into a NOT gate to turn into an off signal or a red signal, and that red signal turns off this oil refinery. Now let's do a little deconstruction here. And let's replace that tank like so. And now what we can do is watch as this petroleum line starts to clear, which will happen reasonably quickly. Now let's go check the automation, and we can't see both at the same time. Okay, this petroleum, you can see it, it's almost gone. Oh, is that duplicant finished? Oh my god, that duplicant's actually finished all the digging. 1 second. Yep. And automation-wise, where are we at? Oh, I did turn that back on again. Yes, the petroleum has cleared the line. So now petroleum is flowing again, and this duplicant is just going to sit there and keep filling that pipe until it's completely full. Well, keep filling the tank until it's completely full. That will take a little time. What I'm going to do is fast forward this though, just so you can see just how effective it is. And why did the duplicant go over there? Oh, they're trying to get to dry land. Or somewhere that's not so horrible. Anyway, I'll fast forward this a bit and we'll come back in when this is about ready to, or when the duplicant is almost finished here, just to see how it plays out. I mean, we deleted about 4 tons of oil there. Replacement duplicants acquired. Let's let them run on and see what happens. I also made sure they all had roughly equivalent stats. Oh, that reminds me, priorities. Let's make sure everyone's on operate, and let's make sure everyone can actually dig abyssalite, because that would be a good idea. Yeah, there we go. And then we'll just let that run on a bit. They'll get a bit stressed. Who cares? Why is that? Why did that duplicant stop? One moment. So a minor thing to note that I completely forgot about. When duplicants are using this, if the oil refinery overpressurizes, it stops working. And that's 5 kilos of pressure. So if there's 5 kilos of pressure around the output for the natural gas, it stops running. That's the problem I was encountering. Anyway, as you can see here, digging-wise, this duplicant is still miles ahead because they spend less time running back and forth and more time actually doing the job, even with the overpressurization problem that was kicking in. These duplicants just sort of constantly keep these all topped up, and that's bad. Implement this little bit of automation, it will save you a ton of time. I believe this is referred to as a memory circuit. You're basically you're memorizing what has happened last and then implementing an action based upon it, or turning a machine on based upon it. As you see, that duplicant's just going to stay there and keep working that machine until it's full. Once it's, oh, damn it, overpressurized again. And once it's full, they'll stop and let it go again. So that's a memory circuit. Now let's look at a slightly different variation of it that you can do to store petroleum if you want. So in this particular example, I've had some practical automation. We want to actually just use the tank to store our petroleum. Now we want to do something similar. We want to fill the tank up until it hits this point. And then once the tank is full, we want to turn off the oil refinery and leave it off until the petroleum drops to this level. That way we keep a nice buffer of petroleum here, and then when it drops that low, then the duplicant comes back and starts operating it again. This one actually uses a memory toggle. Memory toggles are basically what we've been building, but we've been building them using gas and water overflow mechanics. Now we'll just stick a memory toggle there and stick in a NOT gate. You need a NOT gate to use with these. Took me a while to remember that, but yes, NOT gate definitely required. So when this detects that the petroleum is too low, it will send a reset signal. The reset signal, how can I explain the reset signal? Actually, it's simpler just to demonstrate this. We'll put that up to there. Automation wise. So right now this is on. It's sending an on signal because this is detecting that there is less than 500 kilos of petroleum in here. And because there's less than 500 kilos of petroleum, it sends a reset signal, and that reset signal turns this wire. You can see it here actually. Green signal resets the internal memory to red, and this output basically gets reset to red. Doesn't matter what this input is doing. If this sends in a green signal, the output gets switched to red. Of course, we're throwing it into a NOT gate to turn that on. And this one here, if a green signal goes to this, it actually sets the internal memory to green. If you send a green signal in this input port, it will cause this to output a green signal, unless the reset signal is already active. That's all that's happening. Now, let's just throw in some petroleum here. Actually, sample. There we go. And let's throw in some petroleum to about level there. Yeah, you'll notice still a green signal coming out. Now we'll fill it up to there, and it's turned off. The reason it's turned off is this has detected that there's more than 500 kilos. That's gone down here and sent a green signal out, which we've converted to an off. So now duplicants can't operate the oil refinery, and we've got a nice big buffer tank to work with. Now let's drain some of the petroleum out. And you'll notice, still off. Even though all these things have changed, this has switched to red. It hasn't made a difference. It's still going to keep outputting the same red signal. And then we'll go down some more. Still the same. And then if we go down below the required level, boom, turns back on again. Fill it up one more time just to cover that. Even when we put it up to this level, still stays on. It won't turn off until the automation sensor right there detects how much petroleum is in the tank, which is about there, and then it stops running. Though I think when that evens out, it might end up a little. It might not end up at the full amount. Actually, yeah, the petroleum's starting to move. But that there is an actual memory circuit in action. It basically does the exact same thing as this, only you can determine the size of the petroleum tank to your heart's content. Those Most of the automation you're going to be doing by mid to late game is going to all revolve around keeping a certain amount of materials or burning off excess or telling stuff to go somewhere when you don't need it. You have too much polluted water, instead of letting your tank overflow, you dump that polluted water into reed fiber. Or maybe you dump it into space. You have too much carbon dioxide flowing down into your oil biome to feed your slicksters, and your slicksters aren't consuming it fast enough. Then you'll simply use, say, the overflow mechanic on this. Instead of sending it, you'll send it into the slicksters, the overflow will get sent up to space, or maybe you'll send the CO2 into something else depending on what you're using it for. Overflow mechanics, very, very important, and the automation to go with them. Now the three automations I've shown you, they're pretty much what I use to cover all the types of automation problems I encounter, or overflow problems I encounter. And smart batteries, of course, yes, they're constantly in use, but I didn't really cover those there. I think everyone's got those already. If you're looking at this, you should probably have smart batteries down already. Anyway, I think we'll cut this out here. I think we covered all the main stuff to do with automation. Hope you enjoyed, or at least learned something useful, and good luck.